Chapter 7, ESP, Ouija boards, UFOs and drugs. One can become unwittingly a consulter with familiar spirits by playing with tarot cards, a planchette, or a Ouija board. Or by engaging in the practices of extrasensory perception, ESP, like table tipping, table rapping, clairvoyance, clairaudience and crystal ball gazing, which methods Satan's fallen angels and his demons use for direct communication with those who, because of curiosity, personal advantage, or other reasons, are foolish enough to thus cooperate with satanic powers and expose themselves to their influence and control. Demons use ESP, the Ouija board, etc. As to ESP, for instance, the Associated Press reports that David Hoy, a 43-year-old Baptist minister, who got his divinity degree from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, is preaching a psychic gospel to lecture halls and radio audiences. He has written 4 books on the occult and says he is firmly convinced that ESP exists for everyone and can better the world. He says he has used his own prophesying powers for everything from helping a housewife find her scissors to investing in business ventures and predicting accidents. He has prophesied future events, many of which have come to pass. Besides writing books, and making background records of how to develop extrasensory perception, Hoy has been lecturing at between 60 and 70 colleges a year, and conducting hour-long weekly phone-in programs for radio stations in Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Pittsburgh. Expecting soon to be a millionaire, he says having extrasensory perception is like recalling something that hasn't happened yet. It isn't a picture, it isn't words, it's just there in your mind. I tried religion, trying to pray out to someone in the other world. I tried relying constantly on friends. Neither of these gave me answers to life. Extrasensory perception has. What you need in developing extrasensory perception is a willingness to come to depend on it. One must look inward. You must love yourself before you can love others. One builds up confidence in extrasensory perception intuitions by just keeping track of the percentage of hits and misses. We agree that extrasensory perception, like all other communications from the evil spirits, contains hits and misses. Those who practice it are laying themselves open to demonic guidance and control. The Ouija board is another means used by the familiar spirits for direct communications. Many look upon the board as just a game, and do not sense its dangers and what makes it work. Historians claim that devices similar to the Ouija board were used by the Egyptians and other ancient peoples. Such a device was in use in the days of Pythagoras, about 540 BC. As found in the Encyclopedia of Psychic Science, page 270. Ammianus Marcellinus, a 4th century AD Byzantine historian, described a divining instrument which employed a pendulum, and the letters of the alphabet on a rounded metal rim. Table tippings and table rappings were used in ancient times and during the Middle Ages, but came into popular use during the 19th century. Responses were made for yes and no, also the letters of the alphabet were named and the table responded at the appropriate letters, and sentences could be spelled out. Shortly after 1850, M. Planchette, a French spiritualist, invented the planchette, a small heart-shaped table with 3 legs, one of which was a lead pencil. When the operator's fingers were placed lightly on it, the instrument would write out messages. The demons use a similar method of communication in spirit writing, where the subject sits relaxed with a pencil in hand and after a time writes automatically. The Ouija board, patented in 1892, is a more convenient, deceptive and popular plaything. It answers yes or no and spells out messages for the 1, 2 or more operators whose fingers rest lightly on the heart-shaped, felt-tipped, easily sliding indicator. It will answer silly and personal questions, tell fortunes, give advice and give messages from the spirit world, sometimes supposedly from dead friends, thus furthering Satan's original lie in Genesis 3:4 and 5 and John 8:44, compare to Ecclesiastes 9:5, 6 and 10, Job 14:21, Psalms 6:5, Psalms 115:17, Psalms 146:4 and finally Daniel 12:2. During and shortly after the two phases of the World War, many people bought Ouija boards to communicate with what they were deceived into believing were their lost dead now alive in the spirit world. The recent wave of general interest in the occult has brought about a surge in Ouija board sales. In 1967 it became America's favorite board game, and sales since then have averaged about 2 million a year. There are many proofs that superhuman powers operate through the Ouija boards. These may be listed under 3 heads. 1. The messages received often go beyond that which could possibly come from the conscious or subconscious mind of the operator. This is proved by a multiplicity of recorded tests. 2. In a test reported in the Proceedings of the American Society for Psychical Research, the Ouija board worked efficiently with the operators blindfolded, the board's alphabet rearranged and its surface hidden from the sight of the operators. It worked with such speed and accuracy that it demonstrated unquestionably the fact that some superhuman power was mingling with the personalities of the operators and guiding their muscular movements. 3. The many cases of possession after a period of using a Ouija board substantiate the claim that supernatural contact is made through this medium. Psychics and parapsychologists have received letters from hundreds of people who have experienced possession, an invasion of their personalities. Reverend Donald Page, a well-known clairvoyant and exorcist of the Christian Spiritualist Church, was reported as saying that most of his possession cases are people who have used the Ouija board, and that this is one of the easiest and quickest ways to become possessed. See Man, Myth, and Magic, number 73, after page 2060. The Ouija board is a very dangerous device. Some play with it in an effort to gain psychic powers. As one becomes more involved, his fascination with it is apt to lead him to dependence on it and to a corresponding surrender of his own will. Gradually the answers to the questions are anticipated in the mind of the operator before they are spelled out. Finally the Ouija board may be discarded, and in its place the operator may hear a voice. At first the voice may give good advice and try to be very helpful, but as the person heeds and comes more and more under demonic power, the voice, sometimes many voices, will direct the victim's thoughts, words and actions more and more. Sometimes the demon's whisperings are profane and obscene, their suggestions sensual, sexual and even murderous. They may laugh at their victim and tell him there is no hope for him and that he might as well have what they call a good time while he can, or in despair they may lead him to suicide. Many tragic cases could be cited, but we conclude our discussion of the Ouija board with the following statement by Dr. Carl Whitland, MD. The serious problem of alienation and mental derangement, attending ignorant psychic experiments, was first brought to my attention by the cases of several persons whose seemingly harmless experiences with automatic writing, and the Ouija board resulted in such wild insanity that commitment to asylums was necessitated. He continued to state many other disastrous results which followed the use of the supposedly innocent Ouija board came to my notice, found in the book 30 Years Among the Dead, pages 16 and 17. Unidentified flying objects. Unidentified flying objects, UFOs, is the designation used and favored by U.S. governmental authorities for what are commonly called flying saucers. In 1947 a strange circular metallic object was sighted over Mount Rainier in the U.S., and was named a flying saucer by a newspaper reporter. Similar objects have been sighted in the sky and have visited various parts of the Earth in waves and with increasing manifestations since 1950. By the year 1952 the number of UFO reports coming in was so tremendous that the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, was concerned lest an actual attack on the country might not be readily recognized. Consequently, a scientific panel was formed to study the evidence at hand and to advise the CIA of their findings. Under the heading Scientific Advisory Panel on Unidentified Flying Objects dated January 14 to 17, 1953, UFO data was presented, in which 75 case histories of UFO sightings, covering the 1951-52 period, were reviewed. The panel concluded that the evidence presented on UFOs showed no indication that these phenomena constitute a direct physical threat to national security. The U.S. government tried to allay the general alarm on the part of the public by debunking the UFOs as being weather balloons, meteors, birds, aircraft, atmospheric reflections, fireballs, mirages, hoaxes, etc. However, there were many manifestations that these explanations could not fit and for which we believe that the Bible Standard for July 1953 gave the only true explanation, which is in harmony with the Scriptures, the fulfillment of prophecies in our day and proven facts, namely, that they are operated by evil spirit creatures. Millions of copies of the pertinent material in tract form have been circulated, and we still supply them free of charge. And for further proofs that flying saucers are operated by evil spirits who communicate with mankind, and are at times very friendly but sometimes unfriendly and even deadly. For many centuries evil angels have been working miracles and impersonating the dead, and thousands of Christians have been deceived by them, because of their not studying their Bibles carefully enough, or because of their preferring to believe the contrary creeds of the Dark Ages. Surely the demons would not overlook the advantages they might gain by using flying saucers in a world so space-minded as it is today. And since they can impersonate the dead, they can just as easily impersonate beings supposedly from other worlds and take forms of intelligent-looking little green men, etc., supposedly adapted for living in other environments. Indeed, they are very deceptive. People in general, including the heads of governments, scientists, psychics, etc. are of course deceived, not recognizing them as Satan's demons. Note, for instance, what a few psychics have to say. Psychic Bernardine Villanova, who prophesied Spyro Agnew's resignation, says, UFO crews come with advanced knowledge about medicine, space and technology, and they'll share it with us. The aliens communicate by ESP, however, and we must learn to use this before we can successfully take advantage of their advanced knowledge. Psychic Doc Anderson, who predicted the Watergate scandals, speaks similarly. The UFO visitors have found we need their help, and they're anxious to teach us, but we'll have to develop our telepathic abilities first. Sybil Leek, one of the world's most renowned psychics, says, we've fouled the ecology of the Earth, and now we're threatening to foul up space as well. UFO visitors are upset by what we've been doing, so they're hovering us as a protective force. Jacqueline Eastland, a psychic who predicted the great increase of UFO sightings for 1973, said, I feel they're a protective force watching over us, they're prepared to take over, if necessary, by controlling people who have power to change, but they've come to save us, not to conquer us. Catherine Sabin, who has made some remarkable forecasts, claims that some aliens are walking among us right now, taking on a physical appearance that makes them look like humans, and it's likely that they've already taken control of several key world figures. The Reverend Monty Ellis, a psychic better known as a Carson, says that these UFO visitors can possess key figures and influence the course of the world. He claims that they have already changed some lives, and that once someone has been changed he's never the same again. Flying saucers becoming a menace. George Fawcett of Mount Airy, North Carolina, is an outstanding authority on flying saucers. After 26 years of research, he has 16 file cabinet drawers filled with 800 UFO pictures, 48 scrapbooks and 3,000 letters, and he has 404 books on the subject, his Sauceriana collection, he calls it. He receives about 200 UFO-connected letters a month. He says bigger things are afoot than burned grass, frenzied dogs, frightened fishermen, and orange lights leaping in the sky. He says that the present flurry of sightings has been going on for over 2 years, but it has been reported only in local newspapers, so the people do not know what is going on in general. He says that reports are coming in about UFOs at a rate of 6 to 50 an hour all over the world, and only about 10% of the sightings are reported. The Air Force's lengthy investigation of UFOs was discontinued for reasons unknown, says Fawcett, leaving unfulfilled what he considers the government's responsibility for coping with extraterrestrial encroachment, if not invasion, and the whole subject officially dangling in bureaucratic limbo. As a result, he says UFOs have become a menace. People have been injured in connection with UFO sightings, and also kidnapped by UFOs and never seen again. Some have been burned by UFOs and killed by light beams shot from them. Property has been damaged, automobiles have gone out of control and engines have been stopped. Twice in the past, says Fawcett, UFOs registering on due-line radar have prompted U.S. long-range bombers to take off and head for Russia. Over New York State, an Air Force jet interceptor was chasing a bright, illuminated circular-shaped object. As the jet closed in on it, the inside of the jet cockpit became so hot that the pilot and radar operator in the plane could not stand it, so bailed out. The plane crashed and killed 2 children and their parents. Some of the military jet interceptors have vanished while in pursuit of UFOs. The US and Russia are currently engaged in a dangerous venture, bringing down a UFO intact. Some scientists claim that these UFOs apparently have gained the knowledge of how to create an anti-gravity field around the craft, enabling them to cut 90-degree angle turns at speeds of 100 to 500 miles an hour. But in one incident, Navy radar units tracked UFOs at estimated speeds of up to 4,800 miles an hour. One of the objects cut a sharp turn at that speed. This seems astounding, but not so when we realize that evil spirit beings practice levitation, as is often witnessed on TV, in their raising pianos and other objects into the air, causing human bodies to float and to be suspended in the air without any visible support, etc. Demons seek complete control. The demons are using a multiplicity of avenues in their approach to individuals today. They seek ultimately for complete control. To gain it they use 5 distinct steps: suggestion, diversion, impression, obsession and possession. In harmony with 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude 6, the demons are gaining greater liberties as we gradually enter more and more into the world's great day of judgment. In making their suggestions, they approach, not through the unadulterated graces of God's Holy Spirit, but mostly through the disgraces of the fallen human mind, such as pride, conceit, self-exaltation, doubt, selfishness, improper sexual desires, greed, envy, jealousy, malice, etc. They approach also through ignorance, fear, credulity, superstition and curiosity, which opens wide Pandora's box. The Bible, in James 4:7, tells us, "Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." The demons must therefore break down all resistance before they can enter and take control. They do this with many individuals by suggestion, diversion and impression. Also, they sometimes approach through hypnotists and others who will break down any resistance by commanding the victims to relax, let go and give up, and thus come completely under their power and be subject to their will. Christians who have consecrated their lives to God have given Him their wills, to do His will, and of course should not subject their wills to any human being or other influence. Insane asylums and mental institutions report many cases of demonic obsession and demonic possession. May we with other consecrated Christians be able truly to sing.
I want the first approach to feel, of pride or fond desire, to catch the wandering of my will, and quench the kindling fire.
Demons and drug abuse. In our day the demons use very craftily and effectively, especially with young people, various hallucinogenic, mind-bending drugs, such as marijuana, pep pills, LSD, barbiturates, amphetamines, speed, cocaine, morphine, opium and heroin. Also, they use likewise various kinds of alcoholic beverages. They use these things to cause the person to relax, to let go, and thus break down his will, and so open him or her to their entering in and more or less using and or taking control of and possessing the individual. And full possession is their goal. Many young people and others are easily led into the use of such drugs and alcoholic drinks without realizing the serious consequences, which usually affect them unfavorably for the rest of their lives. Their habit-forming propensities are well known, including heroin addiction, which almost invariably leads to a life of crime to support the habit, the monkey on one's back. Evidence presented in Consumer Reports, March 1975, seems to show that smoking marijuana 1. Damages the brain irreversibly, and ages it prematurely. 2. Lowers the body's resistance to infectious diseases and cancer. 3. Increases the likelihood in children of birth defects and of hereditary diseases. 4. Causes precancerous changes in the lungs as well as other lung damage and 5. May lead to sterility, impotence, or both, among men. Some similar bad effects are caused by other hard drugs. Some take to drugs and alcohol as a way in which to express that they are grown up and expect to be treated in that way. Some are rebellious against parental and other authority and so are led into drug abuse and alcoholism as an evidence of their rebellion. Others are led to use them because they are disappointed, depressed, disenchanted with life, or because they are just curious. Young people, and others, are usually easily led by those whom they look up to and regard highly. In many cases, instead of looking up to their parents or others who have their best interests at heart, they look up to popular rock music groups, their playing, singing and lifestyle. And some of the popular rock singers whose recordings are circulated and used very widely, sing songs about drug use, presenting it very favorably, thus making young people more aware of drugs, breaking down their resistance and making them more receptive to their use. It is reported that while the Beatles, a rock singing group, were outside the Queen of England's official chambers at Buckingham Palace in London, waiting to be presented with one of the highest honours Britain could bestow, member of the British Empire, MB, on such a group, they went into the men's room beforehand and got high on marijuana. Grace Slick, another prominent rock music star, was invited to a White House party in Washington and tried to smuggle LSD in with her to drop into the punch, in order to turn on everyone at the party. Many young people, learning of such incidents, think of them as great jokes on the establishment, and consequently are influenced thereby to let down the bars against the use of hard drugs and its accompanying evils, including demon possession in some cases. Some educators, like Timothy Leary, a Harvard professor, told students and others that LSD was the greatest chemical ever invented by God, that it would give one a religious experience, a great expansion of mind and much deeper insight into himself. Accordingly, many educators and students have given such drugs their stamp of approval. Thus many, especially young people, are led to think that such drugs can't be so harmful after all, and that it is all right to experiment with them. Often they take them for the first time on a dare, such as some of their companions calling them chicken if they don't. Many secular and church leaders have recognized the great dangers involved in drug and alcohol abuse, and are speaking out against it. Among many others, Art Linkletter, a famous television entertainer and lecturer, whose youngest daughter died in connection with drug abuse, has been speaking out vigorously against this evil practice. Even the Pope has spoken out against it, stating recently that whole societies have fallen under the domination of the devil, that sex and narcotics provide openings for Satan's infiltration of mankind. It was the first time that the Pope devoted an entire speech to the discussion of the devil,